Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. This is round two. Round one did not go well on the live stream. I apparently do not have good internet connection here in Detroit. I'm at a tiny little desk with poor lighting, but I still wanted to record a post-game reaction. And so this is the first non-live one of the regular season. And I apologize, but if you guys have any questions you would like me to answer, please drop them in the comment section below, and I will do my best to get to all of them. But let's get into it, because this video is not going to be as ugly as this Lakers loss tonight. I just got back from Little Caesars Arena, where the Lakers fell 115 to 103 to the Detroit Pistons to drop to 4-3 overall and 1-3 on their 5-game road trip. It has officially become a disappointing, if not disastrous, road trip, depending on the health of Anthony Davis, who hurt his foot in the fourth quarter and seemed to only further aggravate it as he played through it. But before we get started with AD, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment under this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. All right, let's get into takeaway number one. And it is Anthony Davis is potentially injured and could potentially miss some time. So if we go back to the fourth quarter, AD appeared to aggravate either his foot or his ankle. It was unclear, but he was hobbled rather. He was grimacing, and he was trotting up and down the floor very gingerly. And then with just under 5 minutes remaining, he catches a pass from LeBron and lands awkwardly, finishes the play and scores, but then he falls down and is holding that left foot area. And during the next timeout, he actually crumples to the floor next to the Lakers bench and is holding really kind of the back ankle / heel area. And it seemed to be an ankle injury, but we have later or since found out that it is actually a foot injury for Anthony Davis, which could be better or worse, depending on, probably worse, but depending on what it is, that'll obviously determine the severity and if he misses any time. But he had to be helped up by D'Angelo Russell and one of the Lakers trainers. He went to the basket stanchion and stretched out both legs, and then he gingerly walked back into the Lakers huddle and played the rest of the game. Did score 2 points on actually an alley-oop layup from LeBron, but clearly it was in pain, was not moving well, and really just gutted this one out. And we spoke with AD in the locker room post-game. He was pretty down, and it was tough to separate the result and the Lakers' recent play from the injury. But regarding the injury, he said that he's not sure if he's going to miss any time, that he still needs to go through some testing with the training staff, and they need to determine first what the injury is, and then ultimately the severity and what the timetable or timeline is. But this was a departure from Anthony Davis's previous comments earlier in the road trip, because remember, in Phoenix, he got banged up with his hip in the first quarter a couple times, but he was fine. In Cleveland, he got banged up with his hip again and was grimacing, running up and down the floor in the first half, and he had that stretch there where in the first quarter where he was unable to move and was just hanging out around the 3-point line for 4 straight possessions before JJ Redick called a timeout. And then after that one, though, he said he was going to play in the Toronto game and he'd be just fine. So this was a departure from that. He seemed to be much more pessimistic as to the severity of the injury and what it could potentially mean. And then LeBron James was asked, what is it going to mean for your group if Anthony Davis misses any time? And he balked at the question. He was like, why are you asking me a question you already know the answer to? Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know what AD's impact is if he's off the floor. So the Lakers are in a potentially dire situation here, depending on which way this goes. Like, obviously, AD could be fine, and that's the best case scenario, and he ends up playing in Memphis, or maybe he sits out like one game just to close the road trip and the Lakers don't play again until Friday, so he'll get a few days off and can be rested for that game against Philly. But there's a more severe scenario where he misses an extended period of time. I'm not going to put a potential timetable because I don't know what the injury is yet. But if AD misses really any extended period of time, the Lakers are screwed. Like there's no other way to put it. Right now, Jackson Hayes is the only available center on the roster, and now he's dealing with stuff off the court after the domestic incident that he was involved in. A video of it resurfaced, and we spoke to him after the game. He said that he and his team are cooperating with the NBA in their investigation, and he has no further comment on the matter. So that's another thing that's potentially looming, depending on what happens with that situation and what the NBA determines, and if there's any further punishment with that. But I mean, that's its own thing, right? But really, if we're just looking on the court from a basketball perspective, the Lakers only have one available center. Christian Wood is out. We have not gotten a time table update on him. Christian Koloko has been cleared to return, but he's still in a return to play program, and I don't know if he'd be able to play on Wednesday if the Lakers really needed him to. I would assume not. We have not gotten word that he's been cleared to actually play in a game. We've only been told he's been cleared to return to practicing and ramping up. So it really could be Armel Traore or getting called up, or Rui Hachimura or LeBron James as a small ball five behind Jackson Hayes for however long Anthony Davis is potentially out. So aside from the Lakers losing a game that they should have won, aside from them now being 1-3 on this road trip that I thought they'd go at least 3-2 on, if not 4-1, and now going into Memphis potentially without Anthony Davis, they could easily finish this trip 1-4, or even if AD plays and he's hobbled, could be 1-4. Like, this has gone from a depressing, disappointing road trip to a potentially disastrous one if Anthony Davis is hurt and has to miss even a short amount of time. Could affect the Lakers in the standings. They really don't have the center depth and the big man depth to replace Anthony Davis. They just don't even have the bodies, let alone the defensive talent. And this is why this was such a big talking point for myself, for a lot of fans over the summer, was like they need that defensive backup center. And really, even going back to last year, that was a big need for this group. So if there was ever a time to potentially make a deal a little earlier than expected, I think this qualifies, depending on, again, like we don't know the timetable with AD. I'm just more so going off of the vibe in the locker room and AD's answers to questions that we had been asking him just a couple of games ago after the Cleveland game in terms of his health and his future availability. It was night and day in terms of the answers that he was giving us. So that's the biggest thing overall from this game, was AD's health and the potential impact of that moving forward. So hopefully we'll have an update on Tuesday. The Lakers will be traveling to Memphis, or they're traveling right now to Memphis, and they will not be practicing on Tuesday. Technically, they have to do the injury report tomorrow at, I believe it's 5 p.m. local time. So we should have a clear idea as to is AD out, or is he probable? Is he questionable? Is he doubtful? Like, what's his status? And that'll give us a better idea of what to expect moving forward. But it's clearly a serious situation. I would not be surprised if he just ends up missing the Memphis game kind of regardless, just to play it safe, given he's already been playing through being banged up a bit. But we'll see. AD has been a warrior through this. I know that he gets called street clothes and alternate days Davis or whatever, and like it never stops with the shots at him in terms of his health and his availability. But last year he really pushed through being injured or nicked up at various points in the season. He really wanted to try and play as many games as possible and be as available as possible. It's been the same thing this season. He's refused to come out of games when hurt. He could have easily called it. Like, the Lakers were down double digits. They were trying to make their run late in the fourth quarter, but he could have called it with 4.5 minutes left, and he wanted to play through it, and he did play through it, and he still scored, and he was trying to be as effective as possible despite being hobbled. So I think AD's given this group an admirable effort and really tried to play through everything, but this just might be something that he can't play through. We'll obviously see. The second takeaway for me from this game is speed kills. And what I mean by that is the Lakers have looked slow and unathletic on the perimeter over the past 3 games in their matchups with Cleveland, Toronto, and now Detroit. Those teams, whether it was Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and Karis LeVert, or it was Grady Dick and RJ Barrett, or tonight it was Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. Even Tim Hardaway Jr. was having his way, flying off screens and hitting step back shots and stuff. Like, they really struggled to contain the perimeter in transition, in the half court, in ball screens, in off ball screens, in switches, help defense. Like Detroit, the Lakers tightened things up in the second half, and that's how they were able to get back into the game. There was a couple points where they cut it down to 6 points, and it looked like they were improbably going to steal the game, but they ultimately weren't able to get closer than 6 points, and Detroit was able to stretch it back out with a couple minutes left and really just ice the game there. But Detroit was able to get downhill and to the rim, and part of that, especially late, was Anthony Davis and his inability to move and rotate as quickly as he normally can. But they killed the Lakers in transition in the first half. They were getting downhill, getting to the rim. LA looked like they were playing in molasses. And really at certain points of this game, it looked like these two teams were playing different sports. And just the speed and the downhill verve and aggressiveness of Detroit and their guards just blowing by D'Lo and Austin and Gabe and Max. Cam came in and gave LA a spark. I will touch on him in my third takeaway. But you could throw Rui in there. You could throw LeBron in there. Dalton, it was just really, it's been a rough go for the Lakers defense over the last 3 games. They get ran off the floor in Cleveland. They get ran off the floor in the second half against the Raptors, who are one of the worst teams in the league. We're also missing multiple starters and key players. And then they get ran off the floor in the first half and at parts of the second half by this young Detroit team that has talent and I think has potential to be a playoff, solid team down the road. But obviously entering this game was 2-5 and had not been a good team up to this point. So this was unequivocally a bad loss, even with AD getting injured late. The Lakers were already down around double figures when he got hurt. They were making a bit of a surge, and maybe if he doesn't go down, they end up pulling off the comeback. I don't think so, based on the way the game was going. But in terms of turning games into a track meet and turning it into a transition battle and really just attacking the Lakers guards and wings relentlessly, that's become the game plan. And it really stuck with me when Kenny Atkinson talked about it pregame in Cleveland, when he was like, their half court defense is really good. They got Anthony Davis back there. He mentioned Austin Reeves and LeBron specifically as impact defenders in the half court. But then he was like, transition is where we got to attack them. And you saw that in the Cleveland game. And you saw that you've seen that at times through the first 4 games, especially the Sacramento game. That's a tough matchup for the Lakers as well. But really, it feels like the beginning of that Cleveland game, the midway point of the first quarter, was a bit of a turning point in terms of opponent game plan and strategy against the Lakers of run after makes, run after misses, attack the offensive glass. Detroit had several key offensive rebounds and putbacks, and the Lakers defense has just been a mess. Entering tonight, they were 27th in defensive rating and 30th in transition defense. I believe they're still going to be 30th in transition defense. I think they're still 27th in defensive rating, though not all the games are done tonight. It's a 15-game slate because of the election tomorrow. So you have all 30 teams playing. So Lakers might not quite know yet where they rank in terms of defensive rating, but it's bad. And JJ Redick said pregame that the top line item for this game, and really it's been the top line item for the last couple of games, has been transition defense. And still LA gave up 12 transition points in the first half. I think they ended up with like 15, 16. So they were much better in the second half, but the damage had already been done. And Detroit had already built up. I mean, they led by as many as 20 points in this game. They had a 14-point halftime lead. They led several stretches, 16, 18, 20 points. So Detroit was in control of this game for like the first, I mean, really the whole game, but you can say like definitively the first like 2.5 quarters or so. And then LA made their run, and then Detroit responded with a couple of runs of their own, beginning of fourth and then late in the fourth. And LA just couldn't get enough stops, really. They couldn't, like, it was like anytime the game was getting relatively close, Detroit responded with a big shot, a big play, an offensive rebound, a three. Jaden Ivey killed the Lakers. Like he just got downhill at will. And it's something that the Lakers, like JJ said it after the game, and I don't know if it means he's considering a starting lineup change, but he was asked for his biggest takeaway from the loss. And he said that we need to start games with more defensive pride. And several guys I think you could point to, like obviously AD got injured, but AD's bringing it defensively. I think Austin has been bringing it defense. I mean, he's getting the toughest perimeter matchup. Has struggled the last few games with Donovan Mitchell, Grady Dick, and RJ Barrett. And then tonight, Jaden Ivey was able to get by him a lot. But I think Austin's at least giving his best effort, even if he's still dealing with the ankle injury. He talked about managing that, and that he's just kind of playing through that right now. So I think Austin's been a little hobbled too, but he's not making excuses. Rui to me had a rough game and had a rough, he was on Cade for a lot of it, and that's just a tough matchup for him. That's like potentially a back-end all-star caliber player, more of a point guard type, or at least like lead ball handler type that Rui's defending. But I thought Rui had a really rough game on both ends tonight. LeBron, I thought, had a lackluster defensive game. Also took some bad shots at points of the game when it felt like the Lakers had some momentum. Then he was settling a bit on the perimeter, had a costly turnover at one point that led to a Detroit bucket. And then D'Lo. I mean, I think D'Lo continues to try, but there are still physical limitations there, and teams like to pick on him and target him defensively. So I think the one potential change, if Lakers are going to make a change, is replacing D'Angelo Russell. The problem is Gabe Vincent continues to be a non-factor offensively, and I don't think had a great defensive performance. Max Christie got benched in this one, only played 4 minutes, and then what was done for the evening. Dalton Connect got benched, played 9 minutes in the first half, didn't play in the second half. And Cam Reddish actually led the team in plus minus, was a plus 10 in 14 minutes. And that'll be my third takeaway in a second. But I'm skeptical of Cam Reddish going from out of the rotation to like starting. So I don't see it being Cam. Maybe it's like Gabe is I guess positionally the like for like with D'Lo. But I think the Lakers, whether it's starting someone else or changing making a rotational adjustment quicker, who's coming in at what points, but like these slow starts have really hurt them over 2 of the last 3 games. The Toronto game, obviously they were out to a giant lead, and then it was the inverse. It was the second half, but also that was the same starting group. 7-game sample size, you don't want to overreact. I've been preaching that throughout the first 7 games. But at this point, I think we know the defensive limitations with this group. That's not a surprise. The offense hasn't been exactly humming to the level that it was earlier in the season. And maybe it's because they're on the road. Maybe they're just going through a little skid. But I think it is something to potentially consider because, again, we've known about the Austin D'Lo backcourt and their defensive limitations for a year and a half now. This is not a new thing that we are just discovering 7 games into the season. This was a factor last season. It's why Darvin Ham went to Cam Reddish 9 games into the season and benched Austin. It's why he often closed with Dennis Schroeder during the 2023 run, and last year looked to close with sometimes Torian or Gabe or Spencer, or like he was always looking for a D'Lo replacement. And that had actually been the case, in 4 of the 5 games entering tonight. Was Gabe had closed, I think he closed next to D'Lo on one of them, and then the other 3 he closed over D'Lo. D'Lo ended up closing tonight. They went with the starters. Gabe didn't close, but like it's been clear that the coaching staff has been trying to figure that out. But I wonder if that's ultimately the move here of like, let's see if we, it maybe doesn't happen after the Memphis game. And if AD's out, it's a totally different conversation now, because you're starting Jackson and you're going to have to play a bit of a different style on both ends of the floor. But I do wonder if this ultimately leads to the Lakers making a starting lineup change potentially sooner than later, just because they've been getting out to these poor starts, and it's largely been the defensive end. And in part, I'm not putting it all on D'Lo, but it has been in part teams targeting him and picking on him as the weakest defender on the floor. And we'll see. I think if AD's healthy, they probably roll with this starting lineup, but I think it's going to be something that they consider sooner than later if they continue to struggle defensively. And then the third takeaway was Cam Reddish provided a spark off the bench. And as aforementioned, Max Christie got benched after his first shift. He played 4 minutes, was 0 for 2, had a turnover, continued to look like the version of himself that was struggling outside of, I would say, like the Toronto game. And I think the first Phoenix game or one of the Phoenix games, like I think he's had a couple of decent games, but overall he's of course been struggling and underachieving. So that second shift, when Max would typically come in midway through the second quarter, Cam Reddish actually gets those minutes over Max. First rotation minutes of the season for Cam Reddish, who missed the first couple games due to personal reasons, and then had been on the bench for played the blowout in Cleveland in garbage time, but had not yet played actual rotation minutes. And the Lakers have been going with the 9-man rotation of the starters and Gabe, Max, Dalton, and Jackson. So Cam gets that shift in second quarter and is picking up full court and bringing energy, I think he forced a jump ball and ended up, look, I will be the first to admit, I've been asked a lot about Cam and why is he not playing, and I've given you the reasons that I've heard. I've also given you my opinion on Cam as a player, and I will say it's one game, so I think small sample size, right? But so far, I was wrong. And Cam had a strong impact in that game, and it was a team best plus 10 in his 14 minutes. And he not only replaced Max in the rotation, he replaced Dalton in the rotation in the second half as well. JJ only went with an 8-man rotation, the starters plus Gabe, Cam, and Jackson in the second half. So I will look. When I'm wrong and I have an incorrect take, or I make I take a stance in an argument or something, and I'm wrong, I will be the first to admit it. So I will say Cam Reddish outplayed Max Christie tonight, and you can make the case had a better game tonight than Max Christie has had all season. And it seems to be, like JJ Redick said at postgame, he's earned the trust of the coaching staff after this game. And he would not commit to Cam replacing Max in the rotation. But I would not be surprised, at least based on this game in his performance, if Cam replaces Max moving forward. And then that, I think, makes it a little bit easier to replace him with Vando, given they're a little bit more similar due to their offensive limitations than Max and Vando are. Although this version of Max has not been good offensively in terms of his shooting and attacking closeouts and being a spot-up threat. So, I admit I'm wrong. I was also wrong, and I don't know if any of you remember this or picked up on this, but Max had I think it was last game, 5 rebounds. And I was like, Cam's has not been a good rebounder throughout his career. And so I was like, if Cam's playing the same role, maybe he's not struggling the way Max is offensively, or maybe he's a little bit better defensively, but he's not getting those 5 rebounds. And Max has been I think that's been Max's primary value to the Lakers, has been rebounds and offensive rebounds. He's had some timely tip outs where, he has a really good nose for the ball. And that continues to be one of his strengths, but Cam Reddish had 5 rebounds tonight. So, I mean, look, what do I know, right? I was wrong on this. And for those who've been asking me about Cam, and for those who are pushing back on my Cam analysis, you can let me have it in the comment section. I'm ready for it. But I'm also, again, I'm not I'm never married to my takes. I am always looking to consume new information, new data, watch the game, rewatch the game, and just trying to consume as much information as possible. And that's going to inform my takes and my opinions and my analysis. Also talk to people around the team, talk to people in the locker room, like get the vibe there, and try to combine all of that to come up with my analysis and obviously my reporting. But in this instance, it's mainly just been my analysis of Cam, but also getting some intel from talking to people. But it's one game, so we've seen with Cam again. I think going back to last season, he did have several productive games, but he also had some rough stretches in the rotation. That was why Darvin loved Cam, right? Like, it was like he was the one guy who could come back from an injury and would immediately go back to playing 20, 25 minutes. Everyone else would come back. They were on minutes restriction, and there was this whole thing about being conservative with them. Cam would come back, and he would immediately be back in the rotation, immediately be playing a certain role. But he eventually played so poorly that he ended up getting benched for Spencer Dinwiddie and Gabe Vincent and Torian. So looking ahead, it seems like Cam has at least earned a shot in this Memphis game. We'll see if he can keep it up. But for now, I will say everyone who was commenting about Cam and questioning Cam not playing, you guys were right off of this one game, right? So I keep preaching don't overreact, and I'm still long-term going to be holding my max stock and believe that he's going to be a better player than Cam Reddish, but he has not performed well up to this point in the season. It seems like the Lakers finally pulled the plug on it in the first half of this game. And as long as Cam also didn't take a shot, and I actually think that's a positive. And I don't think that's his skill set anymore. I don't think he's that offensive phenom talent that he was in high school or at Duke or seemed to be entering the league. But the defense is there, and he was picking up full court. He was bringing energy. He was rebounding, and he was doing all the dirty work. And if he continues to do that and plays within his skill set and within his role offensively, I think he can be a useful player. And I think he will have a spot in the rotation at least until Vando's back, and then it becomes more of a battle between him and Dalton. And I think Dalton, because of his status as the number 17 pick and as a guy who the Lakers are really believing in and investing in, he'll probably still be ahead of Cam in the rotation. But Cam outplayed both of them tonight, and Cam got the shift in the second half over both of them. So again, I will own it. When I'm wrong, I will do my best to acknowledge it and own it. And again, I'm trying to be as accurate as possible with my analysis, and I'm very open-minded. I'm not dogmatic. I'm not stubborn. There are some things I have pretty strong takes on, and again, I try not to overreact, so I will kind of keep that take for a while. But I could not deny that Cam Reddish came in and provided a spark, and this is a group that's really needed it. The bench scored 10 points tonight. They continue to be struggling, particularly offensively, but even defensively. I think those guys not hitting shots and not being factors. Like sometimes good offense can lead to good defense because you're not turning the ball over or you're scoring, and then they can't get out in transition. But some of those bench units have been so bad that they're turning the ball over, they're taking bad shots, they're having late shot clock possessions, and then teams are able to run on them. It can be demoralizing when you're not scoring, right? So that's long story short, like, Cam did provide a spark. He was solid, and I think he will likely get a shot moving forward. I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't. Certainly possible that they just go back to Max and Dalton. But especially if AD misses time, they're going to need as many defensive reinforcements as possible. So I think if anything, that makes Cam more important and more useful given his perimeter defensive skill set. But that'll do it for tonight's post-game reaction. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back soon with another episode of Buha's Block. I will talk to you then.